Welcome back to another episode of the Candid Cast, where basically my friends and I just talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly when it comes to coxing and rowing. So today, obviously have an awesome co-host who I'm really excited to catch up with again because we've all been holed up in our homes and not coxing seats for far too long, if you ask me. So anyway, without further ado, I'd love to introduce the co-host for today, Harry Brightmore from the UK. So thank you so much for joining me on this topic. I think it'll be really, really relevant and help a lot of people kind of get some questions answered about what to do while we're not in boats.
Yeah.
So
100%.
Yeah, exactly. So let's go ahead and get started. And if you don't mind, a lot of people do know who you are, but if you don't mind, give us a little bit of background about kind of who you are, and then we'll dive right into it.
Currently I'm coxing at Brookes University in the UK, and I was an undergrad there for 4 years, and the club opened up like a sort of an elite section to allow people to continue rowing as like club members, and it's basically just a branch that allows people to try and step up into the national team. So I was with Brookes as an undergrad, so raced as like a student between 2013 and 2017. Did under 23s for 3 years, raced in the Cox pair in Sarasota in 2017 for the Senior Worlds, and yeah, done bits and bobs for Great Britain on the side since then, like World University Championships, and raced the Nets Cup as well, which is the 12-kilometer side-by-side regatta in Germany, which we did against Holland, USA, and obviously the Germany. So yeah, done a few bits and bobs. But yeah, at the moment I'm sticking with Brookes and trying to see if I can get to the Olympics.
Not a bad goal. Yeah, not too bad. Now, the thing that's really cool about that you guys get to do with Brookes is, like you were talking about, having that basically a boat club, like an extension team where you can keep racing beyond grad school. And we can't do that here in the US.
Sure.
So that's always something I thought was so cool about going to the UK. I'm like, you guys are so lucky. You have no idea. Like, once you're out of a university here, they kick you out. Like, you're done.
Yeah.
You can race as alums, but you can't, like, you're not going to go to the national team doing that. So
yeah,
it's pretty cool that you get to do that. So I think today we really just want to cover maybe some things that we can do as coxswains to sort of stay relevant while we're not in boats, and really not even with our teams. I mean, we've pretty much been quarantined, stuck at home doing, I don't know, watching rowing videos and just feeling sad that we're not in boats. So Exactly. I mean, I think I had, I don't know, the other day, I think I watched like an hour. Of course, you get sucked into YouTube. You know, I watched like an hour of Henley videos.
It's just, you like go down a rabbit hole of,
oh my gosh. An hour later, I was like, I haven't done anything. I'm just watching videos. So, yeah, exactly. Okay. So tell us a little bit about what you have been up to during the quarantine.
Well, the quarantine sort of started, obviously, I mean, I assume it started pretty weirdly for everyone. It was when talk of lockdown and, you know, quarantine, social distancing, all of this sort of stuff was coming up. It was quite a weird sort of do we, don't we when we start. So I remember being in Oxford and like, we tried to, at the start, we were of the mindset, well, let's try and leave it as late as possible. Like, we don't know if this is serious or not. We don't know, you know, whether this will just blow over in a couple of weeks. So, you know, let's keep cracking on. And then it was really weird. Within the space of about 2 or 3 days, it was like, no, you're all going. So our club was, first of all, like, they were really, really helpful in that Brookes allowed the people in the squad who didn't have rowing machines to take those home with them from the gym. So obviously people come from all over the UK, and so the rowers, first of all, were really lucky that they had the opportunity to get equipment that they could train with. So people got pretty stuck into the training to start with. Like, everyone just carried on as normal at home. But I think, as I'm sure everyone's starting to feel now is that it's dragged on a lot longer than people would have hoped for, and it's getting to the stage now where it's actually really hard to keep motivated. So there have been a few things that we've done to like try and just keep up the motivation. And like there's one thing, so I coach at a school in Oxford, and one thing that they started doing was Zoom calls while they do training. It's not that this has any real, like massive training factor to it, but I think it's always more motivating to be involved with training when you're surrounded by your friends. Like you can just sit, like most people are just sitting in a garage and slaving away on an ergo on their own with like the radio on, and that's really hard to do. But I think for these kids that I've been coaching, just having the laptop on, and even if it's you just get a little small pixel of one of your like 12 squad mates, knowing that they're there as well doing the exact same thing, and they're they can look at their laptop and see that you're there doing it. It's sort of that, oh well, I can't just bin it off halfway through and say that I've done it, like, because everyone's watching me, everyone knows that I'm here doing it at this time, so I may as well do it because like we're all doing it together. And I think that's like a really big thing in rowing. Like everyone gets swept into a team mentality, and I think just using these little bits of technology that people have really used quite a lot in lockdown, like Zoom conferences. There's like Microsoft, there's the Teams, I think, or Microsoft Teams.
Mm-hmm.
So I think using those kind of tools just to create that illusion, well, it's not an illusion really, it is just keeping everyone together, and I think that's really important. That's one thing that I thought was actually really, really good.
And I definitely want to talk about that. So is there, just before we fully dive into that, is there anything else that you've taken up that you're doing, even non-rowing? Just taking up your time.
So, like, I wouldn't say I'm like the most active person. I keep pretty fit, but I've just sort of done it for like, I do different things for leisure, but I've actually really kind of got sucked into running and like taking it quite seriously as well. Like I think one thing that's really fascinated me is, so I got suckered in, and I bought a heart rate watch with like a GPS and everything. So
oh, perfect.
Like, that
Which
was
one?
my like early birthday present to me from me.
Oh, good. Okay.
So like I've been like really getting sucked into like proper heart rate training, and it's been quite cool to experience that, because like the rowers all know about that kind of stuff, but I'm sort of sitting there on the sidelines thinking like, oh yeah, no, I know what they're supposed to be doing, but I've never actually experienced it for myself. And I think as a Cox, you can talk about experiences till the end of the day, but like actually just getting that little bit of extra experience that, were it not for lockdown, I probably wouldn't have actually got into, just because I'm like, I'm always coxing, always rowing. I never really have the time to do anything else. So yeah, taking up running and actually getting quite seriously into like the technical side of it, I've really enjoyed it, and I found it quite eye-opening as well.
That's awesome. So any marathons, half marathons, anything you've thought about doing?
Well, I've been, yeah, I reckon I'm getting up to putting out a good half marathon. I don't know if I've got my knees. I've got quite a skinny frame, and I think like my knees will probably explode before I get to a marathon. But I'll give it a go. I'm enjoying it.
The secret is all about the band work and yoga, flexibility and band work.
Heard,
yeah.
I'm very, very inflexible. I need to work on that.
Yeah, that's really where it's at, not just slogging miles.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I know it's true. I mean, it's true. So, oh man, that's really cool. That's exciting that you get to do that. I was actually thinking about getting in a single myself.
Okay.
So, I mean, we don't, like, our boathouses aren't open. I haven't rowed in a long time. I've actually done 2 head races as a bowsie.
Nice.
For sick people. I know, for sick women, like filling in. And I was like, like I'm a decently fit athlete because I do run as well. And I was swimming at the time, but they were like, well, you're a bowsie. And I was like, I'm probably not going to be catching crabs, but I'm certainly not adding any power. Like I don't have any watts, but like
put the valve up the water. You're probably like the lightest person there, so they'll just pick you and Allows that.
I think so. I think so. But I think it's really good to kind of get, well, here, we'll talk about that. We'll get there. But yeah, I thought about kind of getting into singles again when the boathouse is open again. So I thought that'd be kind of fun, get some boat feel. So, and what about your coaches? Like, are your coaches or your team doing that much to kind of keep everyone together, because everyone is in a garage or on an erg or out in fields? Like, you've seen people's Instagrams, like erging out in fields and everything.
Yeah.
So yeah, what about your coaches and team?
So we've usually, because I mean the squad at Brookes is pretty massive. We probably got about, I didn't even know where to start, probably like 60, 70, like even probably more at the start of the year. Like it's bonkers. And usually, I mean, we have like a big social page on Facebook where like everyone gets involved and can like chat on that. But we've never really had, we've never really used any of those tools to like keep everyone training together. It's always just been more about keeping in contact, and if anyone needs anything, that sort of thing. And like we've never, I know there's programs like is it Ludum, that, well, there's quite a lot of clubs use it in the UK, which is like they're a company that pretty much like make a training spreadsheet for you, and everything just like works quite nicely and smoothly. Like we don't really do any of that at Brookes. Like it's quite rudimental. But yeah, so since lockdown, like the coach set up like a WhatsApp group and has made sure that like we've got spreadsheets that everyone like fills in with the mileage that they're doing, and posting scores and stuff, and keeping really up to date. And I think that's first of all, like that's been really good actually, just so that everyone can see what everyone else has done. So there's a little bit of like guilt tripping there. So
a little accountability.
People just have like a line of blank spaces. They're only going to get a few messages from their teammates asking why they're not doing anything. But yeah, I think like that's definitely one thing that has really sort of helped spur people on, that we can see that everyone is still training and getting onto it, even though we're not at the club.
Now, do you think that should sort of come from a Cox in a club? Do you know what I mean? Like if a coach isn't necessarily initiating this sort of togetherness or team working out, team activity, staying in contact, should the Coxes be the one to initiate?
Yeah, no, I think that's one thing that I've sort of struggled to find the line with. And
I can see that. Because you don't want to overstep like what a coach is trying to tell you to do in one hand, but like
in that sort of respect, like I think the whole team has a lot of respect for our coach, Henry Balashweb, and I think the program that has been set like gets followed pretty strictly, and I think he's understood obviously that the current situation is less than ideal, and I think there's obviously some degree of like there's a bit more of a lax feel to it, but as long as people are ticking over and keeping fit, and I think that's sort of the priority at the moment. I don't think anyone's expecting people to be coming out the bag with like PBs and stuff, but I think it's more just about keeping fit and keeping training. But I think from a coxing perspective, I've found that I've just tried to go down the route of staying in with generally like the group that I cox, like the sort of older guys in the squad, and I think for me it's mainly been more of like a social thing, which sounds it's not very sporty, or it doesn't have anything really to do with coxing, but I think just being quite sociable, like messaging the guys, seeing how they're doing, asking about their training, seeing how they're getting on, and just knowing what they're doing. I think that is quite easy in all of this, just to completely ignore it because you're not in a boat and you're not necessarily doing the rowing training, that you just switch off. But I think it's really important to know where everyone is at. Even if they're struggling, even if they're like, people aren't doing that much training, it's important that you know that, and maybe they're just they're they're off the ball a bit, not as motivated. You know, maybe that's okay at the moment. And I think it's important to like just keep the contact level as a Cox really, really important.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And so you're kind of just messaging them, and then are you also setting up Zoom calls? Are you doing any group workouts? Like, let's talk about Zoom a little bit, because I know a lot of teams are using that. And like you said, there might be a few different ways to do that, whether it's one guy setting up Zoom in his garage with an erg, or like a team happy hour. I don't know, whatever it is, like how are you guys using Zoom?
So, well, the Brookes team isn't actually using Zoom for their training, just because there's so many people. It's like a little bit.
And we are not Zoom, by the way. So I don't know. I keep promoting Zoom, but there's like there's a lot of programs out there. So
things, I think everyone
exactly.
Just because of the amount of people that we've got in the club, like I think it's quite tricky to get everyone like pinned down at one point.
Oh, absolutely.
So like everyone's sort of like everyone's keeping up with the training in their own time. But it was with one of the clubs that I coached. They use the Zoom benefit for just keeping inclusive and getting the idea that everyone's doing the training together. I think with older guys there's a little bit more. You'd like to think maturity there, but sometimes it doesn't always go like that. But,
I'm shocked. I'm shocked.
So yeah, like this, people. I guess it's pretty similar. A lot of like uni level, club level rowers. That there's an element of like we can't hand it to you on a plate. Like we have the program and we can guide you in the right direction, but you've got to want it. And I think there's an element of that with the older guys at Brookes. Like everyone is, it doesn't have to sit down together at one time and do the training. Like they'll do it, and people will do that in their own way. But going back to the whole Zoom thing, we have been doing quite regular like Zoom quizzes with like our team will have done like a quiz and we'll like mix it up with some like activities and fun rounds. And it sounds like really stupid just talking about it, but actually it's really,
no way.
really fun.
No, it sounds super fun. I mean, we're doing
so fun.
Yeah, we're doing stuff like this, just setting up like happy hours. And I'm like, of course, a lot of my guys are in Europe or the UK. So I'm the one here like drinking in the morning. I'm like, well, can we make this can I make mine a coffee or Irish coffee or something? I don't know. But I'm like, the other one. But anyway, yeah, go ahead.
No, so we've been doing rounds where you've got to like sprint and like collect something in the house, like something that's like colored orange, or like you have to grab like a roll of toilet paper or something, like just stupid stuff.
That's fun though.
Yeah, no, it's great.
That's totally fun.
And it's almost like I mean, I know you've got like the video call element to it, but it's like just like simple good fun. It's not like everyone gets sort of swept up in jobs and sport and their own lives, and sometimes it's just sort of like a little bit of silly banter goes a long way.
Well, I think you realize, like, I think that really hits on something, is that like when we're so separated, sorry, if I could talk, we're so separated from everyone these days that you don't realize like how much those little interactions matter and like how much you miss them. Like maybe that's the kind of stuff that you would normally do just day to day at the boathouse. But now it's like all we have is this video interaction. And so we look for anything. I was telling some guy the other day, like what I would do for like a man hug. Like I just want a hug, like, like something so simple. It's like that you don't even think about day to day. But now that we're holed up in our houses, we're like, I want like just normal banter, like normal day to day.
That's one thing that I really, really miss. Just like, especially like just being sat in the boat and everyone's just like sort of ripping into each other or ripping into like the bow alongside them, and it's just like take it for granted. Like it's really good fun.
Yeah, exactly.
I do miss that. I do miss that a lot.
I like that quiz idea though. That's pretty solid.
Oh, and the quiz topics have been like,
Do you guys make them up? or do you use something
Yeah,
online?
so like we tried to make them sort of pertinent to the social circle. So there's been we've done a few bits about like history of rowing at Brookes, and like we've put in a few. There's a few of us that support Liverpool Football Club,
Hmm.
and yeah, we've put in a few like little quizzes about that, which most of the rowers don't get because nobody does ball sports in rowing because everyone's cat-handed.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
so we've put in like a few like fun topics, and we there was a good topic where it was like yeah, so a friend of mine was like the quiz master for this week, and he scoured the back catalogue of people's Facebook photos. I'm talking like 10 years ago Facebook photos of like people, and would black out their face, and we'd have to like guess who it was. And honestly, like some of the photos were just horrific. And
Oh my God.
obviously, like there was a couple that were me, and like obviously if it's you, you know that it's you. But it's so funny, and like people get when all the results come out, everyone's just like howling in laughter because it was some photo that you took back in 2009.
That's
So yeah,
so
no,
funny.
that was really good fun.
Oh my God, I love that. That's such a great idea.
Yeah,
And I think that alone, like, keeps morale up, which will make us want to
100%.
work out a
Yeah,
little,
no,
you just,
completely.
if anything, keep morale up. And I think people will be more willing to do the work, if we're not depressed and stuck at home,
Yeah.
in the dark, sweating alone. And,
Well, I think if you've like just been suffering it out on your own for like a week and you haven't spoken to anyone, say like the coach said that you had to do like a 30-minute rate 20 on Saturday or something, and you just sort of you're slugging it out, haven't spoken to anyone, and you're just like, oh god, I actually just really like it gets to Friday and you're just like, I can't be bothered to do it tomorrow. Whereas if you had like a quiz with all your mates on Friday night and everyone's just like, oh my god, we've got to do the 30 minutes tomorrow, what are we going to do? Oh, we've just got to get on with it. And everyone's sort of laughing about it because they're all in the same boat, and might just spur you on a little bit because that everyone was fretting about it the night before, and it's like, oh well, actually I'm not quite just slugging this out on my own, like everyone else is feeling the same too. So there's a
yeah,
little bit of security in that.
totally. Totally.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, what would be your role in that? Like, would you initiate? Would you just ask how everybody's piece went, or what's your role?
Yeah, just like really, it doesn't have to be like really official and professional. I think it's just keeping up to date with like how the guys are doing, because I mean certainly the kind of role that I've played when we haven't been in lockdown, I try to know how like everyone's scores are going and whether people are in sort of peaks and troughs of their training, and it's good when you're the driver of your boat or your crew. It's important for you to know, like, I mean, the analogy here is you've got to know how your engine's doing. You've got to know like what the boat's capable of, and even in this sort of period where people are probably just on a bit of a lull and just keeping things ticking over. Like, it's important to know that. Really, really important.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially when there's kind of no end in sight. I'm not sure how
Yeah.
different it is for you guys, but I mean, for us, we don't even have a lot of boathouses open yet. We have curfews. Like, I'm probably not going to be sitting in a coxswain seat for a long time, and it's pretty depressing.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a little bit different over here. I'm sort of the same. I'm not. I can't see when I'm going to be coxing, but rowing is one of the sports that like has started to have some leniency. So people in the UK are starting to get out in singles if they have them. I still don't think clubs are open, but if people own singles, they're allowed to go out on the river now, which I think is a huge step, because I think it still allows people to socially distance themselves, and if they're competent scullers, I don't see why they can't get out. I think it's just the element of if they do require any assistance, but I think people should be able to judge that whether they can or not. So I think like the rows on the team are starting to feel a little bit of buzz that there might be light at the end of the tunnel. But I think in terms of Coxswain's getting back to it, I think that's still a long way off yet here. But I'm sort of, getting a little bit excited just the fact that people are getting on the water. I think that's like quite cool. And, if one of my friends gets out, well, I'll ask him how it went. Like, was the river nice? I've been seeing on Instagram, people getting out on the river at Wallingford where Brookes train, and God, it looks like Mill Pond, and it's sunny. It's like 25. I don't know what that was in Fahrenheit, but it's like 25 degrees Celsius out here, and Mill Pond water on the river, no stream. So yeah, it looks really good. I would wish I was like training for Henley right now.
I know. Oh yeah. Oh, I know. Yeah, and you kind of like live vicariously through these people that are even out in singles. That's what I was saying. Like, I'm like, I'll take out a single. I'll do anything, just to be out on the water, like have something to talk about and rowing,
I remember in a few pre-seasons, actually, I mean, I wish I could do it at the moment, but I remember a few like pre-seasons ago, I went out actually I did quite a bit of sculling. And I went out in a double, and I also went out in a pair with Rory Copus and Ali Cox, who was at Brookes at the time, and that was really good fun. Like I'd say like every Cox should have a go in a pair, because it is like terrifying.
Terrifying.
Yeah, it's really terrifying. Really terrifying.
Yeah, I think that's honestly the one boat I'm most afraid of. Like trying.
I think it wasn't as bad as I thought it would be.
Okay.
But at the same time, you can't really switch off because you will go swimming. We actually stayed upright, which I got back in on the like landing dock, and I literally crawled out, and I was just like, oh my God, I can't believe we just like got through a whole session. I think we did like 12K as well. Like,
oh my God,
did, like, a proper session. Yeah,
that's a lot. Yeah. That's like a lot.
And actually, no, I've been in a pair a separate time as well. So I think this was last year at like the Great Britain national team trials. So two guys on the British team, Sholto Carnegie and Tom Jeffries were in a pair together, and they raced, and Tom he was finished at the finish line, and he couldn't row back in. He had to get some treatment. But like the pair was stuck at the finish line. So I was there just like the Coxes at trials, just do like admin roles and like help out with the timing team and stuff. So I was at the finish line, and none of the other coaches wanted to row the pair back up, and they couldn't like get a truck to take it back. So I was like, yeah, I'll hop in. So I rowed with Sholto back to the landing dock at Caversham, which is great fun. And yeah, stayed upright in that as well. So I've never fallen in a pair.
Okay, so you have a good, oh dang.
It was good fun. It was good.
All right, I might need to try this. Maybe with someone not quite as strong as Sholto, but
yeah, no, I think Sholto was rowing at like arms only, and I was trying to get to like full slide, and he was still pulling me around.
Yeah. He's an animal for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, that's really fun. Okay, I'm gonna try a pair. I'm gonna do it.
You should give it a go. It's good fun.
I definitely will. Okay, so what else do you think? I mean, I'm trying to think like what else we can do to really just stay relevant. I mean, besides just kind of checking up on those guys, I get a lot of questions about staying sharp, even because people are like, look, I need to be in a boat to stay sharp as well. I need to practice just like the rowers do. And, if you don't think that coxswains need to train to do pieces or practice out on the water, then, I don't know what you're thinking, because we absolutely do. So what do you think we can do on land? Is this just going to be like another winter training? Are we like, what can we do on land to stay sharp?
There's quite a lot of stuff that I do in like down in like the down areas of a season, where I'm not doing much. And I think, like you sort of touched on it before, like been watching a lot of rowing videos, and one thing that I always try, like one thing that I always try to do to really try and like make sure that you know, I can pick up on anything is like I try to watch. It's really easy to like watch a video of a really bad crew and just be like, oh well, that's going wrong, that's going wrong. Da, 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 da. I think like it's actually, I mean, I'm sure everyone will probably find it the same thing. It's like, you know, you sit in a crew that is actually really good, and you're sort of sitting there and you're thinking, oh well, it's actually feeling pretty nice. Like, what do I say? Like, what can I pick up on? And there's like, the thing that I've learned is that there's always things that they can be doing better. And I think, you know, I would recommend looking at videos of the best crews and seeing if there's anything there that can be done better. And that's, it's really hard. Like, it's not something that, you know, you can just go on YouTube and watch the Germinate and be like, oh yeah, there's loads going wrong. You know, it takes like quite a lot of time. And I think the more you watch these better crews, you understand, you can start to understand what makes them go quick as well. Like, even if you're looking for the bad things, you start to understand, well, actually, yeah, like you've got 8 people that are all doing this one particular thing. It's like, why are they all doing that? Like, what's the purpose of that? And you've got to like sort of just, every movement in the rowing stroke has a purpose. Like, if there's unnecessary things going on, you wonder why they're there. And usually they're the things that stick out. You know, if everyone's doing the same thing, it's usually because there's actually been a lot of training and a lot of effort to make it look that way. And it's usually the things that stick out are the, you know, the unnecessary things that trim off. So why do you need to trim that off? You know, it's all very well saying, oh well, he's late, or, you know, that he's coming out early. It's more like, oh right, okay, well, he's sort of sitting really upright, and, you know, this guy's sitting really into his pin. And sometimes it's like, well, neither of those things is necessarily wrong, but what is the general theme of the crew here? And I think, you know, looking at these really tiny details are things that, you know, can really help you as a cox and a coach as well. Like, you know, that's the job of the coach. And I remember when I was starting coxing at school, like my coach he'd never actually tell off, like, well, coach the rowers. He'd never tell off the rowers for doing something stupidly wrong. He'd actually have a go at me for not picking it up. And that was his way of like coaching the crew. He'd use me as the middleman and be like, right, well, Harry, look what so-and-so's doing. Why have you not picked up on that? And he did that for like a good solid year. And I hated it. But it was like the best thing. Like, looking back on it now, you know, I was like 15, 16 at the time. And I honestly think like having that drilled into me was the thing that made me like a real like perfectionist, and trying to like make sure that I pick up on every detail. So I think, yeah, look at videos of really good crews and see if you can pinpoint everything. And if you can't find anything, that's fine as well. Like, it's really hard. It's really hard.
Especially when you're not in the boat too. Like, you can't necessarily like, feel,
feeling,
you know, what's happening.
like a really big factor as well. And like, you know, I think that's something that you've got to experience like over a number of years. It's quite hard to just say, oh yeah, feel what the boat's doing. It does take a bit of time, but, you know, try and understand the aesthetic of it as well. Like, I think that's really important. And yeah, don't just leave it for the easy cruise where there's tons going on, and, you know, you can write an essay on it, but challenge yourself and look at really good crews and understand what it is that they're doing, because there's usually a theme. You know, like, if you, for example, like, I always think of the Canadian 8 in the Beijing Olympics. Like, if they were really, really slow, people probably wouldn't be that surprised. Everyone's like, oh, well, they don't look like they're rowing that well. But like, there's a theme there. There's a theme that like everyone in that boat is like committed to a long and super powerful stroke. They're not as focused on like the general flow of it. There's like a really key thing that every guy in the boat is focused on, and they've trained for that, and that's why their boat went quick. And, you know, then you can move it along and you can look at the Germinate, which are like super slick, super efficient. And, you know, maybe those Canadian guys were like tons stronger than the Germinate. I mean, we don't know, but there's always like a theme in a really good crew, and just, yeah, try and find that theme.
Yeah, it's actually funny you say that. I tell a lot of younger coxswains too that ask about identifying things. Like, a lot of times younger coxswains come in and they're like, I know that there's rush going on, or somebody's late, you know, like pretty generic problems where there's really a lot more going on than just rush. And I tell them to actually watch the Olympics, watch the World Championships, and you can notice exactly like you said, why do the Romanians win a sprint? Whereas like the Irish have a very strong start. Like, what are these differences in what these teams are doing? How are they rowing differently? And what's working when? Like, why are the Romanians having why are they rowing through everybody in, every race in the last 400 or 500 meters? Whereas, the Irish take off like a rocket off the start. And so like you can start to kind of like, exactly like you said, just identify who's doing what and why it's working.
Yeah, 100%.
So
I think that's really important. It probably matters more in smaller boats and slightly slower boats as well. Like tactics come into play a little bit more. And yeah, we were talking earlier about knowing your engine and knowing what your crew's capable of. Maybe those guys know that. For example, like a crew that has a really strong last 500, maybe they don't have the capacity to like rate really high. Maybe if, getting out the blocks just isn't their thing. Like that, if they try and do that, they just go slower and have spent more energy. And maybe their strength is actually they're just super fit, super resilient, and they're just going to keep chugging down the track. Like people have different strengths and different weaknesses, and yeah, like you said, is really good to sort of just look at races and think, right, well, why have they done that? Why, Kiwi pairs are a really good example. Like everyone would try and beat them to 500, and inevitably they'd all get rowed down.
Yeah, that's totally true. And even looking at historic strokes too, like if you look at how, the Germans like used to row back in like the East and West Germany days, or like how some of the really old American crews used to row, like Harvard and stuff, they would row with like a really short, quick stroke. And like, why does that not work as well now? Like, I think just really paying attention to rowing itself, like learn rowing, like learn the history of the stroke, learn why things happen the way that they do when people row a certain way, and kind of take that time to just like absorb a lot of videos and information. And
there's lots of it.
Oh my God.
Get lost into YouTube.
Gosh, it's the worst. It is the worst. Yeah. And then it gets all depressing. And I'm like, well, we're not racing. But anyway. So yeah, I think that's a really good tactic. So yeah, we've kind of talked about like learning, like watching videos, staying in touch with your guys. Anything else that you can think of that would be maybe a good way?
Similar to the rowing thing, actually, is there are lots of coxswain recordings on YouTube as well, which you can listen to and do the same thing. Like understand why people have said something, why they haven't said something. Did they need to? You can do exactly the same thing, but I think it's important to know that people within the different crews that you might listen to, the coxers of these crews, they will have like built up certain calls that fit in with the guys or girls that they're coxing. But it's good, really good just to sort of listen and just again pick out key themes like timing of calls, what sort of things are they picking up on, and how specific they are. Like it's not just don't rush. It's like there's a particular focus, like on a particular point of the slide, and these are sort of things that you can watch on and improve on without actually having to be in a boat. You can just understand why these coxers are trying to focus on certain points, and I think that was that's always like a really good thing to look at. But one thing I would say is the drawback of that is don't just take their calls and think, oh right, well if I say all of that, that's going to make me a really good cox, because it's not just about reading off a script. You need to do the same thing as if you're watching the rowing. You need to take the elements of what they've been saying and understand why it is that they've been saying those things, and that's what's going to make you a good cox. Because I think if you understand the purpose behind the calls, that's what's going to bring in to when you do sit in a boat.
Oh, absolutely. And I think there's one, I mean, I'm sure you know this. There's like, I think it's the ladies plate. It's Your Race.
Yeah.
And people just use that race. I mean, you see that one like thrown around all over the place, like, oh, Harry said this,
The
Harry said
really
that.
funny
Like,
thing is, like whenever people ask me about that, is that I actually don't think I coxed it very well.
okay, I was gonna ask
That's the funny
that.
thing.
Yeah.
I look back, I haven't watched it in years because it actually makes me cringe. And
Oh, it's the worst listening to yourself, though. I mean, no one. I mean,
well,
you
yeah,
have
no,
to.
that's why. Like,
Like,
it's hard listening to yourself because you always think like, oh God, does my
like,
voice sound like that?
oh, that sounded way better in my head.
But
Oh
one
God.
one big critique I have of that recording is I say way too much. And I think that's
Interesting.
like one thing, that is one thing that I've always struggled with as a Cox until probably like the last like year and a half. I've really, really tried to stop saying as much. And it's so hard to do.
Yeah.
But you've got to, one thing that really, really helped was actually being, so that summer from 2017, I was in the Cox pair with two guys that were really, really good in a Coxless pair on their own. And I remember sitting there thinking like, well, how am I going to Cox these guys? Like, I can't just Cox it like I did the Brookes 8 because it's a completely different crew. You know, these two guys were already like really well established. And I sort of just realized that actually I'm coming into a unit here where they don't need a Cox. Like, they know what they're doing. I just need to like pinpoint maybe the like one or two things that maybe they could do a little bit better. The rest, they know what they're doing. I just need to sort of be a bit of a tactician. And like that summer really taught me a lot from, you know, being in that Cox pair and also like looking back on what I did in the ladies' plate. And I think you've got to pitch yourself in the rower's shoes. And, you know, if you've got someone just barking at you for 6 minutes straight, it's going to become white noise. And yeah, so a lot of people really like that recording. And yeah, I think there's a lot of good stuff that I did on it. But I'd say the biggest thing is learning to step back, which I think as you get into quite experienced crews, I think that's super important. You've got to step back because you're with guys that know what they're doing. They don't need to be like repetitively told what to do. You've got to be a lot more precise and concise with what you're saying. And I think that, yeah, that was one thing that I found from that video.
Definitely. I know a lot of younger, newer coxswains are sort of afraid of silence or quiet. And a lot of them will say like, how, you know, what do I say? What do I do? And I was like, sometimes you don't need to say anything. Like sometimes,
Yeah,
you know, sometimes you, even if you just tell your rowers, like, I'm just going to focus on steering for a little bit, or I'm just going to sit here and just kind of feel what's going on. So if, you know, if I'm quiet, just
like
listen.
one thing that like you can use so one really, really good thing that I like to do when, you know, say if you're in a really long session, the guys are getting pretty bored and the boat's starting to flag a little bit. I've got like there's a focus that we had in R8 last summer where it was usually actually if we were like paddling between pieces where like nobody wants to spend any energy, the boat's just sort of like a bit flat and meh, and I try to like take a bit of a technical focus where you don't have to put any effort into it, but it allows you to be silent and let the guys think. And it was actually, it's like when everyone finishes the stroke and there's a big like clunk as the blades feather, I got us to like focus on actually just like feeling the finish out a bit more, pressing through the feet. And I said, right, okay, I'm going to shut up for 30 seconds. And I don't want to be able to hear the feathering at the back. And it actually just teaches the guys to like keep hold of the finish and just release with the hands a little bit looser, not like just slamming their forearm back. And you actually get this like really nice silence because everyone's actually just like listening, which probably they don't do most of the time when they're listening to me coxing. But when I tell them that I'm going to shut up, they'll listen.
So true.
Yeah, like stuff like that. You can incorporate silence into technical things. And, you know, it gets people to just pay attention in a different way, which does like wake people up a bit.
That's so true. And a lot of people ask about racing too. Like, how do you balance being a little bit quiet? I know we could talk about racing for years, but how do you balance that kind of quiet and focus when you're actually racing? Versus when you're making calls?
This is 100% like again, like that 2017 video was, I look back on it and I just think, God, I really can't do that again. Because I think my like I'd say, you know, like at 2017, like I'd say I was already like quite experienced by that point, but I was still getting this one thing really, really wrong. Like I didn't like how I was doing that at all. So I'd say after that point, through like 2018, 2019, and the start of this season, one thing I started to do was say a lot less in the first minute, because our start sequence was pre-rehearsed. We knew what we were doing on that start sequence. It wasn't like anything fancy, and it didn't need to be really complicated, so nothing really needed to be said. Everyone knew what they were doing. I just sort of give them like, I basically, I was just a glorified stopwatch for the first minute. I just say, right, 20 seconds, 30 seconds, do this, 40 seconds. And then like on the minute, we tended to have like, that's when I'd really step in and we have a bit of a kick. And, you know, like you can look back on some of our Hemi races and like the minute mark was our big thing. So we tried to sort of emulate watching the Germinate, like everyone seemed to go with them. And then just like 250 to 750, it was like, well, how do we keep up with them? Like what are they doing? And I think we learned to actually just not put as much focus on that first minute. We just get into the race. And then like in my head, I was thinking, be quiet. And then when we get into the minute, I'm going to be like, right, okay, focus on this. We're going to do this up to this point. Let's go now. And it's sort of just, you know, rather than getting out into the race and thinking, oh, I need a breather now. We've got through 250, 500. I'm just going to sort of settle it down. It's almost the opposite. It's like, right, we've got to 250. Up we go. This is it now. It's happening. And I think just that little bit of a change just from me as a Cox, I think like I felt like it helped quite a lot. And I think it just decluttered a lot of the white noise for the rowers as well. It just kept them a little bit more focused.
And so what would you do in training sessions to sort of practice that? Were you literally just practicing kind of being quiet?
Yeah, like it didn't happen like overnight, because I think if you just, you know,
It never does.
Doing one thing to the other, like everyone would just like, Harry,
yeah,
are you okay?
like, are you okay? Yeah.
It took a while. It's something that I've been continuously working on since 2017. So I think, you know, over time I changed it and changed it for different crews, and as people sort of progressed through the Brookes squad and like came into the boat I was coxing, like I just would try different things. Like every week, you know, I'd sort of just try maybe something else. It's sort of only really relevant when you're in that racing season in the summer. So, you know, you have a few months there to build up a repertoire of what you're going to say. But I don't think it's something that you need to like lose sleep over. I think it's important that you build something that is going to be consistent with how you race. Like I wouldn't say anything in training, in, you know, if we're doing like starts or doing the first 500 or something, I wouldn't say anything in that point and would then say something completely different on race day. You know, I think one thing that I like really like about the crews that I've been coxing is that there's a really high degree of consistency. Like we get to race day and we know what we're going to do, and there's not really any surprises usually. I think, you know, I think that's really important. It's exactly the same with coxing. I think, you know, the less variables there are for the rowers, the better. As a cox, you're part of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing that you guys get to do that I think is so cool about Brookes is you get to line up so many boats across and essentially practice just being side by side every day. And I came from a program like that here where we had 4 to 5 8s across every day. And so every single day you're practicing steering between two boats. You're practicing, you know, edging ahead a little bit, you know, from that next boat. And that was actually something I had to adjust coming to the UK. I mean, we had 1 8 and we basically just did our own thing every single day. And so practicing race calls or race pieces really only came, I mean, pretty rarely, to be honest. So it wasn't something that we got to do. And I felt like I didn't have as many opportunities to sort of try out new things with some of these guys or kind of see how something might work during a piece, because we only got so many before a race. And so like if I screwed it up, it was like, you just didn't have time. You didn't have time to experiment. You just had to do what they wanted, essentially, maybe throw in a little bit of my own thing here and there, but there just wasn't time. So I think it's cool that when you line up like that, you can throw things in, and if it doesn't work, just never say it again. Just chuck it. But you have so many opportunities to do that, and that's really, really cool.
Yeah, definitely. Like when I started at Brookes and I was in like the 4th eight, I think that environment is something that's really good for coxing in the same way as it is for rowing. You're in a pressure cooker the whole time, and you get so much racing experience from just training that obviously the racing is super exciting, but it's almost just like, oh well, we did this yesterday. Like this is exactly the same as what we did yesterday. It's not like you get to race day and you're like, oh god, I wonder how this is going to turn out. I've got no idea what's going to happen.
Hopefully not.
It's sort of just, and like I think that gives everyone a lot of confidence, and gave me a lot of confidence as well. Like coming from I didn't cox like our school program from my high school wasn't particularly amazing, and I wasn't a fantastic sort of up and coming cox. I just worked really hard when I got to Brookes, and I think being in that environment there's a lot of structure in place for you to be quite a savvy racer, and I think that's something that I've really enjoyed doing, especially like you said, when you're sort of, if you're training on your own and you come into like a lot side by side racing, particularly like when I know you did some of this when you were at Leander, like when you do the boat race fixtures.
Whew.
Yeah, like they're pretty intense, especially for a cox as well. Like they're really, really hard to get right. And
I'd never coxed anything like that before. I mean, we don't do that here.
If I wasn't at Brookes, I don't know what I'd be expecting, but yeah, like I mean that sort of intense like bullying situation is something that we would be doing on the river every day. So like when we're racing alongside Oxford or Cambridge and there's overlap for most of the race, like we're fine with that. Like it's something that we've been doing a lot of, so it's experiences like that build you up as a cox, and I think you've got to chuck yourself in the deep end sometimes.
Oh my gosh. No, it's so true. I mean, like I said, we would train, like I came from a program where we train side by side, but we always pretty much had straight water, like a few bends here and there, but we have long harbors and waterways. So it wasn't coxing on the tideway with no lanes, with no points, with like having to steer off of another boat and race and stuff. And it was a different kind of racing than I'd ever done before. And I was so glad to get to do it because it was really fun. And I learned so much just doing that kind of training. It's really good.
I've always whenever I've watched the Harvard Yale race, I've like it always disappoints me a little bit. There's like a Boyd course, because I'd really love to see them like properly get at it amongst each other.
That'd be good.
Like I mean, yeah, it's really good fun.
Yeah, it's a good race for sure. So, okay, is there anything else you can think of that we might be able to do? Again, we could talk about this literally for years, talk about racing and everything, but just while we're kind of stuck at home and there isn't a lot of this hope in sight, I guess you could say, for us. Anything else you can think of that we can do, try, practice, people we should talk to, anything at all while we're kind of stuck at home before we
I think we've covered a lot of it, but I think it's important to know that there is going to be light at the end of the tunnel. Like we will get out in boats again, and it's important that everyone does keep on top of the coxing in any capacity that is. And just there's so much on the internet for resources, videos. There's a lot of stuff to look at, and I'm not saying that all of that stuff is going to make you better, because being out on the water is the best thing that's going to make you better. But while we're here, take the opportunity, because you know, when it was previous to lockdown, I'm sure people probably wouldn't have been scouring the internet as much as they would now, because you know, they've got endless amounts of time on their hands. But yeah, you know, look up resources, look at videos, try and just challenge yourself in ways that, you know, you can't in the boat right now. You know, there's a lot of videos, like the boat race we were talking about just then, Oxford and Cambridge boat race is a great example. They have cameras for the footage on race day that are like behind the cocks on the stern, and you know, you can look at the boat races from the past, and you get a cock's eye view of the crew, and you get to see what it looks like. So, you know, look at their crew and see if there's anything that you can pick out. Like, try and challenge yourself and see how, like, if you can improve your coxing from sitting in other boats.
That's so good. I think that's so good. Okay, last two questions. So I like to ask everybody this question. What do you think makes a good coxswain great?
I've been asked this before, and I think, you know, there's a lot of answers that you can give here, but I think the one thing that stands out, certainly in the coxes that I've been around and competed against, and it's you've got to be a really strong leader. Like, you could be the best cox in the world, you could be absolutely flawless, but if you didn't get on with the guys in the boat and you couldn't lead them, you're useless, because they're not going to give you that level of respect. And I think there have definitely been coxes that I've known, like at Brookes and at other clubs, that maybe haven't been like as technically adept as some other coxes, but they have the like utmost respect from their crew, and their crew will just buy into anything that they say. And I think sometimes, you know, that makes a really, really strong cox, when you've just got 100% backing. So I think, you know, that's why I was saying, like, the social aspect of this lockdown phase is really important. You've got to be on side with your guys and girls, and make sure that you're there in it with them, because these collective experiences build up your rapport with each other. And when it comes to race day and you've been through all of this, they'll, you know, give you that extra percent. And I think, yeah, what makes a great cox stand out is that just social leader aspect, where you've got them like putty in your hands and they'll do anything for you.
That's beautiful. That was so good. No, I couldn't agree more. I mean, yeah, you nailed it. Okay, so last year we got to race each other a lot. What were some of your favorite races that we got to do? We got to race against each other. What were some of your highlight races?
Duisburg was good fun.
I was just gonna say, I think that was pretty much my favorite race ever. Like, especially lining up between you guys and the Deutschland Doctor was pretty spectacular.
Yeah, that was good.
I felt pretty starstruck almost, like, because it was so fun. It was just so fun. I was like, this is the kind of racing I want to do. This is amazing. So
yeah, no, that was a really good race.
it was. I wished it wasn't so windy. We got a lot of headwind.
Yeah,
in that race.
It was really. I think that the course is a little bit laney. Like, I think you can, if you're sort of in the wrong lane, you can really get screwed over. It seems like the Bosbahn as well a bit, even though it's like a wind tunnel. Sometimes if it's coming in a particular direction, just turns into a bit of a whirlpool. So, you know, you might be getting a tailwind on one side of the lake, but the water has to go somewhere, and it sort of, like, I don't know. Yeah, it's a bit of a washing machine sometimes.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But yeah, that Duisburg was really good fun.
Yeah, I think. Oh, I love that race. I know. And then I think it was supposed to be U23s this year, and I was so disappointed because I wanted to go back. And I was like,
yeah, no,
come on, don't do that. I want to race.
Yeah.
Okay, well, where can people find you on social media? Where can we follow what you're up to?
I'm usually on Instagram most of the day at the moment. So I'm Harry_Brightmore on Instagram. That's probably the main way to catch me. If you want to see any like fun, silly videos that I've done, I'm on like a little group with a friend of mine on a Cox single, which you can also find on Instagram. Again, Cox_single. And yeah, like I usually just post a lot of rowing stuff, really. I'm going to try and put up some I'll try and put up some coxing videos next year when I can finally get back in a boat, because I haven't done anything since that ladies' plate recording. I think it's time I like update the record and settle my score with myself.
I love that. That's perfect.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. I know we could go into a lot of race detail. We get tons of questions about that, but that's really a whole other topic. So
yeah, sure.
But thank you so much again for,
it's been a pleasure to chat with you.
Good. Oh, I'm so glad. I'm so glad. Well, you're of course welcome back anytime. So thanks again. And for everybody else who is watching, obviously you can get in touch with me on Instagram at Iron Will Wit or the Candid Cox. I'm much more active on Iron Will Wit right now. I'm sorry, running 2 accounts, a podcast, and all these other things is a lot of work. So I'm trying. Other than that, thank you guys again, and we'll give you more updates, more guests, and all kinds of other fun things that are coming up that may have to do with the boat race coming up in some new episodes. So stay tuned, and we will talk to you guys next time. Bye.